It is October, and that means Halloween, and that means ghost stories. Hello, I am Nicole Travillas-Fravel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. And today I am going to talk about my favorite scary books for preschoolers. Now, I am not talking about introducing preschoolers to Stephen King. I am talking about picture books that have, a slightly suspenseful surprise to them. Before I introduce the books, I want to talk a little bit about why you might even want to approach these types of picture books with preschoolers. And I'd say for me, the number one reason for introducing a little bit of suspense to preschoolers is it gives them a chance to think about and conquer their own fears in a safe environment, right? It's a book. It is make-believe. It is imaginary. And so they can have an opportunity to problem solve, right? To face head on, oh, this character is a little bit afraid of the dark, but so am I. So here's what happens to this character. And the good news is that most picture books have a happy ending. And so these types of frights are always going to be resolved for the characters. And usually they are resolved in a way that is kind of like the main monster was just kind of misunderstood. The other thing you want to keep in mind is a little bit of tips for reading the books. If you do have some preschoolers in your group, some of the people in your group, they're going to just be excited about it. They're going to laugh along with you. They have fun being scared. Others are going to be a little bit more apprehensive. So before I read the book, often I will remind the children that it's not real. It's pretend. Sometimes, depending on the group, I will tell the children, I'm not going to reveal the ending, but I've read this book before, and I know that everything works out okay for our character, so it's okay. Don't worry. It might seem like they're having a problem, but you don't have to worry about it. I know they're going to figure it out at the end. You can also stop the book kind of in the middle and have the children brainstorm two things. One, they can brainstorm some ideas. Right? Here is this character that is having a nightmare because they're afraid of monsters in the dark. What could they do? Right? Could they ask their parents for help? Could they slip that magic rock under their pillow? Could they hug their stuffies tighter? They could also make predictions. So I've had some children that instantly spiral to the worst possible outcome, right? This child's never going to have any friends ever. Yes, that's one outcome, but how many possible outcomes can we generate here for this character? And then can we make a prediction? And then let's go ahead and read and see what happens, right? Was our prediction correct? These often are when children are emotionally invested in the stories. That's when they learn to love the creativity of literature. So almost dive in. I'm going to say the other tip is sometimes it's about how you read the book. This is The Little Old Lady Who Wasn't Afraid of Anything. And it's by Linda Williams. And really, it's about a woman who is walking through the forest, and strange things start to follow her, like shoes follow her. And I think on the next page, pants start to follow her. And in the end, it turns out that she builds a scarecrow with all of the pieces. Now, there are two ways to read this book, right? You can lean into the spooky and you can say, two shoes go clump, clump. And one pair of pants go wiggle, wiggle. Or you can take a step back and lean into the silly, right? for your group and what they need. Two shoes go clomp, clomp, and one pair of pants goes ooh, wiggle, wiggle. Right? So you decide the level of spook that the children are ready for. Um, Also going to mention, I know that some of these books have a tenuous connection to nature, right? The woman is walking through the forest. They all have a connection to nature, stronger, more or less, um, because I was choosing them for their spookiness. Um, I am sure that Where the Wild Things by Maurice Sendak means no introduction from me at all. Everybody knows this story, but what I want to point out here with this story is what a way of showing children how to overcome a difficult situation, right? Max tries to tame the monsters in the story in the same way that his mother attempts to tame him. He is gaining control over his situation. And I definitely suggest when you are done reading this book, having the children create their own wild things. You have a plethora of natural items outside, leaves, helicopter seeds, twigs, whatever you can find, pine cones, to build your own wild thing. You can do it ephemerally, right? Just on the ground. You can have some sort of circular template, monster shaped template that children are gluing their items onto. You can do it with or without other craft materials like pom poms or yarn for hair. But the really cool thing about monsters is nobody has seen them. So you can create anything. It is completely open ended, and there's no way for a child to make a mistake. All right. Speaking of creating monsters, I love this book, The Monsters Monsters. It's kind of a Frankenstein story where these three little monsters try to create the ultimate monster. But then they are very disappointed when their ultimate monster is animated and turns out to be a very gentle soul who basks in the sunlight and pets the rats and the snakes. And by the end of the story, however, they have come around to the giant monster's point of view, and they are all sitting on the beach, eating donuts, and enjoying the sunset. So I think this is a great way to introduce to children or just to encourage them to think about the simple pleasures that nature provides for us. All right, creepy carrots. You probably know it's a year-round favorite of the children in my preschool. Um, they get very sad when it comes out of rotation. It comes back, but sometimes I just need a break. Um, but this one is about Jasper Rabbit, who is picking all of the carrots um, from Krakenhopper Field so that he can enjoy a snack until he has so many carrots that he thinks that they are following him, and he starts seeing creepy animated carrots everywhere. His solution is to build a fence to lock the carrots into their field so they can't follow him. But the surprise at the end is that we learn that this was the carrots' plan all along, because not only can they not get out, Jasper now cannot get in to eat them. So this is a really good one to talk about empathy and point of view and perspective, because while Jasper thought the carrots were creepy, the carrots thought that Jasper was the creepy one. Okay. So this one I have just recently discovered. This is Lenny and Lucy, and it's by Philip C. Stead. And it is about a child who moves to a new house, and their new house sits across from a forest, and he is afraid of the forest. And you might have children, and I have had children who are afraid of different parts of the forest, who won't wander off the path. Um, and his solution is to build some imaginary friends who sit at the edge of the forest and guard it for him. And this works okay, but his perspective changes when the girl next door brings over her binoculars and they start to spot interesting creatures in the forest. They're still sitting outside the forest, but they're looking in and they're spotting owls and other interesting things. And he thinks, okay, maybe the forest isn't so bad. Now, the story ends, and the child still has not ventured into the forest yet, but you get the feeling that he is becoming more comfortable with it. And so you think this is good to talk about small steps. Right? We don't have to conquer our fears all in one fell swoop. How do we take that one little step forward? And who could help us through it? Right? And so I've had children after we read to talk about things like one child brought up that she was afraid of the gap between the platform and the train. And that her family, her sister, her parents helped her by showing her what to do, by showing her that they were okay to cross the gap, by holding her hand at first to cross the gap, so that it's those little steps forward. All right, Fright Club. This is by Ethan Long. And now last year I had a child who was afraid of our chickens. And we did that small steps, right? Gradually built her up so that when we visited the chickens, it was okay if she just wanted to sit very, very, very far away from the coop until we were done. And then we gradually got where she could hold a teacher's hand and stand closer to them. And then we got where she could stand holding a teacher's hand while the teacher fed the chickens, until finally she felt like she could hold a teacher's hand and feed the chickens. So it was small steps over time. But that story is to point out, maybe you have children who are afraid of critters outside, right? They're afraid of the bugs, they're afraid of the spiders. And this book is helpful because it takes those critters that often we think of as cute, bunnies, butterflies, squirrels, and they attempt to join the Monsters Fright Club on the eve of Halloween. The monsters, of course, dismiss them at first, and then the small critters show how scary they can be by making their small critter noises or whatever they do as small critters. And they are eventually allowed entry into the Fright Club. And all of the frights here really are treated as humor, right? Because the monsters get afraid and they're running away from the squirrels and the bunnies. But it gives the children a chance to kind of look at their own fears from a different perspective. All right, this next one might be more for adults and teachers to conquer their fears than for children to conquer their fears. This is It's Raining Bats and Frogs. And now, anytime I talk to other teachers about the fact that I am in an exclusively outdoor preschool, or I talk to parents, their first question is, what do you do when it rains? Well, this book is perfect for anyone who needs to conquer their fear of the rain, because the witches are about to have their annual parade when it pours. And so Delia, an enterprising young witch, has a solution. She's going to turn the rain into something else. And so she does this successfully, but each time she turns the rain into something else, it has disastrous results. And in the end, the witches decide that the rain isn't so bad and they can actually have fun in the rain. They can splash, they can float, they can play in the rain. And so I encourage you, after you read this book, to get outside and splash in some puddles with your preschoolers and play in the rain. All right, Black Dog. This story begins when Mr. Hope, the dad in the family, looks outside the window and sees a black dog outside. He gets frightened and decides that it is so big, it is as big as a tiger. And each successive family member goes to help, looks outside the window, and makes it bigger so that eventually the dog is seen as big as a T-Rex and as big as a made up Big Jeffy until Small, the youngest member of the family, looks outside, sees the dog, goes outside, and with some playful bravery, leads the dog on a playful chase um, through a playground, over a bridge, and each time the dog is chasing the dog has to shrink to get through the next item where they're following the child. And I'm going to say that due to the illustration right here, this might be the scariest book on my list. Um, so I would approach it definitely with the ideas from the beginning of how to set the children up for success. But the beauty of it is this is literally about a family who makes their problems bigger than they are. They misconstrue things until a small problem just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and then shows you how you can shrink your problems back down to size, and they weren't that big of an obstacle to overcome after all. All right, so if you have watched some of my book roundups before, you know that I always include a nonfiction book, and this book is about how to be a witch. And it really leans into the spiritual curandera type of being a witch, where, excuse me, the witches in this story are ones who make teas from natural items, create potions that are actually balms and ointments and cures for people who need soothing. Um, And so they also have the animals in here, which are their familiars. So it talks about their connection to nature. And so this is a good one for children who want to create their own potions in the mud kitchen. Now, you are probably going to want to know your families in your particular group when you introduce this book. Now, for my particular group, when I read this book, I lean away from the religion aspect of it and into the foraging aspect of it, as we do a bit of foraging here and we do a bit of cooking over the fire and we are concocting things. And so we can talk a little bit about the healing properties of nature when we read this book. All right, the last book, and you probably know what's coming up. It's the wordless option. And this is The Light Inside. And because of the small size of the book, I might not read it with my whole group. It might be something that's more suited to a smaller group that's gathered around you or one-on-one. And what is happening in this book is after Mom puts her little pumpkin head to bed, the little pumpkin head has some scary thoughts about creatures that might be hiding in their dark room. They end up through a dream, right? Being swept up outside with their cute little mouse stuffed animal. And unfortunately, the first thing that they see outside is a black cat who scoops up their mouse stuffy and runs away with it. And so Pumpkinhead is determined to go on a journey to save the stuffy. Their journey takes them into the forest and in contact with the creatures from their nightmare in the beginning. Now, each creature needs some help from Pumpkinhead. And then, in return for Pumpkinhead's help, gives Pumpkinhead help in searching for the mouse stuffy. And in the end, Pumpkinhead ends up back in bed with the mouse stuffy, safely asleep when mom comes to check on them. And I think this could be great for doing some oral storytelling with the group, right? Get creative, right? And face the fears, right? What scary creature could we encounter and what help might they need from us? And then what could they do? Just like the witch could use their special flying power to help, what could they do to help in our story that we're coming up with? So I'm interested to hear, do you have some favorite spooky-ish stories that you discuss with young children? Please drop them in the comments. Get in touch with me through the newsletter or through Facebook, through Instagram, and then join me here next week for another episode of Wildwood Teaching, when I will invite you to watch me pack up, see what I take into the forest every day. I will see you there.